So hello and welcome. My name is Kelsey Visser, and I want to welcome you on behalf of the Peace and Justice Institute at Valencia College. And we are so excited to offer this three-part community resilience series with Dr. Ken Ginsburg. And this is the first in that series for parents. So parenting in an age of uncertainty with Dr. Ken Ginsburg. And I do want to say a huge thank you to our sponsor, Orlando Health, for sponsoring this event, as well as everyone in the Creating a Resilient Community Network who supports this work all year long. So thank you so much. Oh, it's not letting me advance my slide. See, technical difficulties already. One second. All right, if I do that, that works. I have to click behind my screen. Okay, so just a couple technical reminders. Everyone is muted right now. Dr. Ginsburg is going to give a 1-hour presentation, and then there will be an opportunity for Q&A at the end. So you'll see if you go to participants at the bottom of your screen, you'll get a bunch of different icons, and there's a raise hand icon. So when you are ready to ask your question at the end in the last half an hour, so between 6:30 and 7, you will just raise your hand icon and we'll see you bump up to the top of the list, and we can unmute you so you can ask your question directly to Dr. Ginsburg. We will ask that everyone please keep your microphone on mute so that we can hear Dr. Ginsburg during the presentation. And if you have any questions, you can also write things in the chat box and we'll try to respond to that. Dr. Ginsburg will not be reading that during the presentation, but if there's anything we can answer as PJI, we are happy to do that. So you're muted right now. You can raise your hand icon, and there's also the chat box that you can use. And we are recording this right now, so just in case you don't want to be seen or heard, just make sure you turn your video off if you don't want to be a part of this. Another little technical reminder is the way you see the presentation. You might want to go up to the top where you can see gallery view or presenter view. It would probably be better for you to be in presenter view for this workshop so you can see Dr. Ginsburg and his slides. Otherwise, you see everyone here, which we are hoping to have up to 300 people here tonight, which is exciting. All right, and just a few different ways you can get involved after you see this presentation. We have the Creating a Resilient Community Network. So if you want to join this network, we're a network working to collaborate across sectors to transform our region into one of prevention, hope, healing, and resilience for all. So our next meeting is on July 21st from 2 to 4 p.m. on Zoom. And Brittany is going to put that link in the chat box if you want to join the CRN network. We'd love to have you. And I will send out all these links in an email after this workshop as well. So we also have a common read going on with Dr. Ginsburg's book. You'll hear a little bit more about his philosophy and his way of seeing the world in a minute, but we're reading his 4th edition of Building Resilience in Children and Teens. And this starts on July 22nd. So if you want to be a part of this common read together, we will have an opportunity to get together virtually on Zoom to discuss the book, and there'll be lots of questions posed on the Facebook group as well. So we'll hope you join that. And we also have ACES Connection Central Florida. So this is a national space focused on trauma healing, resilience, and adverse childhood experiences, but we have our own Central Florida group. So if you want to join that group, we'd love to have you. Brittany will put that in the chat box as well, and I'll send you over the link. And lastly, I just want to share about Dr. Ginsburg because we're so lucky to have him. As a parent myself, I feel really blessed that I can be a part of this workshop tonight too, because these are very turbulent times. So Dr. Ginsburg is the author of the AAP book, Building Resilience in Children and Teens, the 4th edition. He practices adolescent medicine at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia and is a professor of pediatrics at the University of Pennsylvania School of Medicine. He directs health services at Covenant House, Pennsylvania, where he serves Philadelphia's youth enduring homelessness, and is also founding director of the Center for Parent and Teen Communication. His AAP multimedia toolkit, long name, Reaching Teens, Strength-Based, Trauma-Sensitive, Resilience-Building Communication Strategies Rooted in Positive Youth Development, prepares professionals to be the adults young people deserve them to be in their lives. So our next workshop with him in this Community Resilience series will be for medical professionals, and that will be on August 25th from 3:30 to 5, and you can keep an eye out for how to register for that as well. So without further ado, anyone coming on, make sure you are keeping yourself muted if you didn't hear my technical reminders, and there will be an opportunity at the end of his presentation for a Q&A portion. Great, I'm gonna mute myself, thank you.
Thank you so much. It is really a pleasure to be having this discussion tonight, and also to say that I can't wait till I get to meet you in person, because I've been working with the youth serving professionals now, and we've gotten to work pretty intensely together already, but it's all been virtual. So if you'll have me, I want one of my first couple spots when we're allowed to travel again to come down to Orlando and to work with you guys. So tonight, we're going to be talking about the truth. And the truth is, these are really uncertain times. And what I want you to leave with by the next 90 minutes is an understanding of how this uncertainty is a reality that can't be denied. But I think there's a tremendous amount of hope that could come out of this if we play this right, in terms of how we can kind of raise and prepare our young people. And it really is about how the adults react to this uncertainty. With that said, I love beginning my talks with this young man. This young man is the screensaver on my computer. I begin every single task I do with him. Why? I was surfing the internet one day in 2016, and this kid grabbed me with his smile. There was just something about the exuberance that came out of his face. And I have to tell you, I have identical twin girls, and one of the only differences between them is that one of them has these crinkles when she gets mad, or when she gets really happy. And she used to be able to come up to me, I would go, no, not the eyebrow. And this kid has that eyebrow. So I was surfing the internet, I saw this kid, and for me, he brings out the joy of childhood, the hope of childhood, and the possibilities of childhood. He reminds me why we do what we do, and that if we build a world in which all child can succeed, we will all rise. This young man is on a refugee boat. I met him just like you did. I didn't make that up. I was really grabbed by his smile, and then I began seeing what surrounded him. So I don't know what it is that made it so that his family got on a boat that was not seaworthy in Northern Africa to make it to Italy. But I'll bet he had a harder life than anything I've endured in his 2 years. But I will tell you what I do know. I do know for a fact that in the last hour, this kid, my gosh, talk about uncertainty. Is the boat going to sink or not, right? So I know that in the last hour, this young man experienced kind of trauma beyond anything I've ever actually experienced. This young man probably saw people screaming. He probably saw people crying. He got cold, he got wet, as did everybody. And yet, this kid looks okay. And the question is why? Because in this picture, we actually have all of our answers to what we're going to be talking about tonight. Kids are okay when the adults around them are okay. When the adults become child-centered, but take care of themselves as well, the kids are going to be okay. Because kids look for clues at the adults and say, what do you think? And then they co-regulate, meaning borrow the emotions from the adults around them. So I'm not very good at math, but there's 3 people there. And what I know is that 2 of them are his parents, and 1 is someone else. And this story tells you everything you need to know. Kids are okay when the parents around them are okay. Extra adults are additive. When there are not extra adults in their lives, when the parents are not able to do what they should do in their lives, the extra adults become critical. So how are we going to define success for all young people? As we think about raising our own kids, and as we think about building communities for all of our youth to lead us into the future. That was the answer. I just gave it to you, to lead us into the future. When you look at a child in front of you, you tend to overfocus on one of 2 things. Am I producing a happy child, and will that child do well academically? And that is a very narrow definition that will set you up for some disappointment. Why? It's too darn easy, right? You have a 4-year-old, you want to make him happy, give him a cookie. You have a 12-year-old, you want to make her happy, give her a bike. You have a 16-year-old, you want to make her happy, give her a car, which you shouldn't do, factually. But the point is, it's too easy to make kids happy. And it's too short-sighted to look at a kid at the end of high school and say you're successful or not. by that standard, you need to know that I'm pretty much of a failure, right? If you measured who I was when I was 17, right? So what do we want to do? Instead, we want to look at the 35-year-old that we're raising. And we want to say, who is this person that we are creating to be? And then everything changes. Of course you want the 35-year-old to be happy, but happiness is something different. You don't make a 35-year-old happy by giving me a cookie. You make a 35-year-old happy by when they have a sense of meaning and purpose, when they have strong relationships. That's what makes you happy. What else do you want? You want the young person to be compassionate, to be the kind of person who looks at people who are downtrodden or oppressed, and rather than look at them and go, what's wrong with you? They understand that something happened to them, that it's all of our responsibility. What else do you want? You want young people who are going to have tenacity, stick-to-itiveness, who are going to be able to work really hard. We're going to have grit, meaning they're going to see life as a marathon. When they fall down, they're going to get back up. When they see an obstacle, they're going to walk around it. They're going to run on their own, but know that they need other people to hand them the juice bottles. Not people who are running sprints. Because if you're running a sprint, you're going to do whatever it takes to get to the finish line, including tripping the guy next to you. And furthermore, when you fall down and you're running a sprint, you've lost the game. What else do we need? We need people who are creative and innovative, because all the best ideas haven't been thought of yet. And creativity and innovation in today's context is more than being an artist. It's thinking and imagining solutions to problems that adults have not been able to figure out. It is the righteous indignation of youth that is our calling card towards a future where we might survive. Whether it is getting past the equity issues so that there is authentic equity, whether it's looking at the environmental issues, it's having kids who are creative and innovative who will solve the problems that we've learned not to see. What else do we need? We need kids who are going to be collaborative, because all the best ideas haven't been thought of yet. We need kids who are going to honor diversity in the truest sense of the word, right? So my generation, being like an almost 60-year-old, my generation counts complexions, they count genders, they count sexualities. And if there's enough people in the room, you pat yourself on the shoulder and you say you've done a good job with diversity. That was never diversity, because that was not inclusion. Diversity coupled with inclusion means that you're actually honoring the wisdom and life experience of other human beings. And you are listening to their wisdom and sharing in decision-making and sharing control. When we do that, our kids are going to be ready for a positive future. And what else do we need for our 35-year-olds, the ones you're raising now? What else do we need for them? We need that for them to be resilient. Because as much as you wish you could wrap them in a downy quilt or staple bubble wrap around them, you can't. So the best you can do is to try to get to this point of resilience, which in its simplest terms, it's about overcoming adversity, bouncing back. But it's more than that. Certainly it is about survival, but it's also about thriving in the best of times. When we raise our children to be resilient, it's a mistake to think you're only trying to make it so that when life gets hard, they're going to be okay. No, because people who know how to make the hardest times okay also know how to get the juice out of life, right? How to really figure out how to get the most out. Resilience is a mindset. To understand resilience, you have to understand what stress is, because resilience really is about how you respond to stress. But to understand stress, you have to understand that we all come from the jungle, right? And that in fact, we are all prey animals, and that the most dangerous thing that can happen to us is this guy's great-great-great-grandpa. And if you don't believe me, think about how we're designed, because we are literally designed to run from a tiger. So here I am in my jungle chair. I'm just sitting here and I smell a tiger. What should I do? I should jump and I should run. And if you have any questions about that, think about what happens to your body. So the first thing that happens to your body is you get butterflies. Why? Because that is literally the blood leaving your belly to go to your butt so you can jump and your legs so you can run. How cool is that, right? Then your heart beats fast. Why? So you can pump that blood. And then you breathe fast so you can oxygenate that blood. You sweat so you can cool off while you're running. Your pupils get big during times of stress so that the windows are open and you can jump over a log. Even if it's dark out, you'll survive. And most importantly, you can't think clearly during times of maximal stress. Why is that? Because you're not supposed to turn to the tiger and say, I'd like to work it out with you, right? And you know what else you can't do? You can't feel fully, because you're also not supposed to turn to the tiger and say, what's it like for you to want to eat me, right? So during times of maximal stress, not only do our bodies feel ill and unsettled, but quite literally, we can't think to solve a problem or connect to solve a problem. So the mindset of resilience is being able to tell the difference when there's a real tiger versus a paper tiger. And if there is a tiger chasing you, there is no better solution than running. But when you think things are tigers and they're not, you're not going to bring out your best self, and you're not going to connect to other people, which is the best solution. Now, when it comes to human beings, this is not actually the most unsettling thing. Here, you survive or don't. But what really makes us ill biologically and distressed psychologically is not really knowing where the tiger is, right? So look at this picture. If you focus in the middle, there is a tiger there. And that is the hardest thing humanity deals with, is wondering where the tiger is lurking. Will I be safe? Will I not be safe? This is what 2020 is. 2020 is just a time of profound insecurity. We are battling an invisible virus that we're terrified of, and we are dealing with equities on a different level. People who believe that racism has diminished have always thought of racism as a tiger. They've thought of racism as racial hatred. And blatant racial hatred in many places and in many ways has diminished, in the sense that, but there we still have it, right? There's plenty of it out there, but it's diminished. And it makes people go, what are you talking about? I don't see the hatred that you're talking about. And what they're missing is what's going on, is that we are finally understanding that racism and racial hatred are two different things. Racial hatred is this. Racism is this. It's the tiger lurking in the grass, always wondering what it is that might undermine you, what people might really think about you. It's the implicit biases and the structural forces that you just don't see anymore because they're blending into the environment. But I can make a strong case biologically and psychologically why they are causing so much harm. Because uncertainty is the greatest challenge to our sense of security. Now, as we keep talking about resilience, you know, the bottom line of resilience is that young people are going to be more resilient when the important adults in their lives believe in them without condition and hold them to high expectations. So who are the important adults supposed to be? Those are supposed to be your parents. And when they are, the rest of us are additive. And what is parental unconditional belief? Is that like, Johnny, it's okay to do drugs? You know, is that what that's about? Of course not. Unconditional belief is, Johnny, you're doing drugs, you're not living up to your best self, but I'm standing beside you. My presence in your life is not conditional. And what is holding to high expectations? What you can believe is that high expectations is about people who, it's about grades, or it's about trophies or scores. That's not what it is. High expectations is, I know who you are. The most protective force in a young person's life is to be known, to be seen as they deserve to be seen. It is about knowing the true character of your child. When does that help the most? It's not when everything's hunky-dory, it's when it's not. Because the best way of getting your child back is to bring them is to see everything that's good and right in them. This is my favorite picture of childhood. This is my daughter, Tali. She's the one with the eyebrows. And it's Valentine's Day. And so she's about 2.5. And I've gotten all my girls, my 2 girls and my wife, chocolate roses. And Tali ate hers, and she thought it was delicious. She thought that it was so good that if she ate Celia's as well, it would be doubly delicious. But she was pretty sure that if we didn't see her doing it, it was going to be okay. So she hides behind the door. If she can't see us, we can't see her. My favorite picture of childhood. So what do you do with that kid? Do you come down and shame her? Do you stigmatize her? Do you punish her? Punishment never works. Discipline always works. What's the difference? Punishment is something you do to someone else that makes you feel better. Discipline means to teach or to guide, and it only works when it's done in a loving way. And there's nothing more loving than acknowledging all that is good and right in the human being in front of you. And this little girl, she's now a social work student, right? And a law student because she wants to work on school to prison pipeline, right? She's as good as it gets. And when she was 2 years old, she was already walking bugs outside to be with her bug grandmas, right? So this is not a kid who you condemn. This is a kid who you celebrate. This is a kid who you talk about all that is good and right, how much she cares about fairness, and how right now she wasn't being fair to her mommy. That's what discipline looks like. Coronavirus. This is a very unsettling time. And without a doubt, this is going to leave a generational mark on young people. There's no question about it, right? They're going to be going back in 2020, and this is going to be the year that everybody remembers, right? They're going to say, what were you doing during coronavirus? What were you doing during Black Lives Matter's protest? How was it affecting you? How were you participating, right? And how the adults shape, but we adults shape the impact that it's going to leave, I'm certain. And that's what this talk is about. Now, as if it were not enough to have coronavirus, which already pulled the curtain behind all of our equity issues, there was then an awakening around racial justice. But what we have to understand is that this is an awakening for many, but it's just an affirmation of reality for too many. And for those people for whom it's an affirmation for reality, they're looking at the rest of us and saying, is this standing behind us thing something that's convenient for you right now? Or is it something that's going to really become part of your life? Are you really going to stand with us until we have an equitable world, or will the news cycle change for you? Right? That's what we're going through. So the question is, are we going to raise a generation of future adults who are going to help us build a better world? Right? Now, what are we going to do during these times of uncertainty? I'm going to ask your permission to get a cup of water I left in the other room. I'll literally back in 15 seconds. So every emotion that we have creates an opportunity for building resilience. And this is a time of many emotions. It's during times of maximal stress, like now, that we are going to build resilience in our kids. Because young people build resilience through practice, but first they have to observe. They have to know what to practice. So taking care of yourself is always a strategic act of good parenting. But in this context, it really is how we're going to build our kids' resilience. And I'm talking about whether they're 2 or whether they're 18. And the concepts of things that are going through right now, there is so much complexity in the universe that how we model, how we think through complexity is the way to build thinkers and problem solvers. Not just for the issues we're thinking about in 2020, but for the issues that are going to come up in 2080, right? How we model is what they're going to know. So let's take each emotion and think about the resilience lesson that can come from it, right? And so we are practicing resilience, we are working for resilience, but then as a result, we are building it in our children. So the first thing is anybody who's paying attention, all the good parents feel like they're absolutely failing. right? We have so many balls you're juggling anyway. And then now you're worried about you're working from home or maybe not working from home. You have always worried about your kids' education, but now you're responsible for education. You're worried about illness. You're worried about your own illness, your neighbor's illness. You're worried about the country. You're worried about the government. You're worried about all of these things. And there are all these balls that you're juggling in the air. And if you're not dropping some of them, well, I don't believe you, because we're all dropping the balls, right? We are all feeling like we're failing. This is an opportunity to learn self-forgiveness. What does self-forgiveness look like? It looks like being as compassionate to other people as to yourself as you would be for other people. It looks like giving yourself a break, right? Giving yourself an actual break to not be able to accomplish everything. It means looking at the balls that are still in the air and saying, this one's important to me, but for me to be able to keep this one in the air, I gotta let this one drop. And looking at the ones on the ground and saying, I might have made a good decision. What else does it look like? It looks like self-talk. It looks like every time you begin to say, I should, I better, oh my goodness, if I don't, all of those words that get yourself into self-condemnation and catastrophic thinking, you catch yourself and you stop and you say, this will not help me. I need to be gentler on myself. You teach how you do this, not only will you be happier, but your kids will worry about you less and your kids will learn to do this. Next, my kids are so frustrated and now I'm frustrated with them. What are they thinking about that they're all like worried about not being with friends? What about me? I have to worry about the money. These kids are so shallow. One of the most important things a human being can do to be resilient is to empathize with other people, right? Because when you can understand another person's point of view, what goes around comes around. You'll have better relationships and you'll be the recipient of empathy when you need it. Listen, the best way to get empathy, the best way to build empathy is to have received it. This is the time that we have to be empathetic about our kids. The truth is, it can be maddening how our teenagers are more frustrated with being with their friends than we are having to juggle all the balls that we're juggling. It can be frustrating as heck to feel as if our kids are complaining so much because they are having to follow more rules when we've had to follow so many rules our whole lives. But what you have to understand is that what your kids are going through, in fact, is harder than what you're going through. I'm not saying more important. I'm saying biologically and neurobiologically harder than what you're going through. Why? Because their brains are literally wired to be social, right? Part of adolescent brains is that the reward centers go in there and they are really satisfied and have tremendous pleasure around friends. It's why they're so giddy with peers. It's why they're so driven to be with peers. And it might drive you crazy, but remember that this is ultimately how you get grandchildren. This is adolescents' job, is to begin having relationships with peers, right? So when we take that away, it is biologically difficult for them. What else? Adolescents' job is to stretch their boundaries and test their limits. They are super learners, and learning happens at the edge of existing knowledge. They are supposed to stretch. They are supposed to experiment. They are supposed to follow rules, but take it to the edge to see whether they're ready for stretched rules. And what's happening, and they are biologically driven to do so. So what's happening now is they're practically being contained. And when they're being contained, that is particularly difficult for an adolescent. So I'm not telling you to not have rules for your kids. I'm saying understand how hard it is for them. Be empathetic about it. The fact that you're paying attention to their emotions is exactly what will teach them how to pay attention to other people's emotions. Next, this whole thing of, I don't know how I feel. There's so many things that are going on, so many different emotions that are happening. I don't know how to feel. Exactly. Go through the process of acknowledging, processing, and releasing your emotions. Too many people have been raised to believe that emotions should be minimized, and it should be anything but. We need to be able to really optimize people's emotions. And what that means is that we need to pay attention to our own. As a man, I can tell you that too many men have been raised to say, put your emotion away, worry about it later. Now we all have common emotions, so it's a time to really talk about how to manage them and how healthy they are. Next, I want to pull my hair out. These people in my house, they're driving me crazy. Of course they are. Families are complicated places. Love is complicated. You'll always get maddest at the people you love the most. You're always most disappointed with the people you expect the most from. That's called being human. It's called being alive, right? And that's why we leave our houses sometimes, but now you can't, right? So what that means is that you have to be that much more intentional about creating safe havens within your homes. Shalom bayit, peace within your house. You have to be super, super intentional about it, right? So what does that mean? It doesn't mean that you ignore feelings, but it means you choose to be gentler with each other. You choose to say to each other, you know what? You're making me want to pull my hair out, but I love you. And right now, there's enough chaos in the world that we need each other. So I'm going to give you a pass. And you're just going to remember everything that's good and right about the person. So when we do that, not only will we have better homes now, but think of the life lesson you are giving your kid as they might venture into their own family later. Next, I need a timeout, right? We all do, right? We need a timeout in order for us to be a calming presence for others. This is a major resilience lesson, right? You can't just escape, but you can retreat, rebuild, regroup, and return, right? That is what we should be doing to learn how to be a calming presence for others. Because the reality is there's chaos outside of the home. And when there's chaos outside of the home, it's really important to create calmness within our homes. And we do that through co-regulation. And I talked about this with the first picture with a little boy, right? But what is co-regulation? Think of it this way. If you are on a plane and there's turbulence, it's a really scary thing. How do you decide whether or not you're okay? You look at the flight attendants. And if they're still serving snack mix, you're cool, right? That's what co-regulation is. You're borrowing other people's emotions, all right? And when we do that, we are giving people the opportunity, or kids the opportunity, to learn how to self-regulate. Self-regulation is a skill to be developed. How do you get yourself to calm? So if you're watching this and you're thinking of the lens of how do I behave for my 3-year-old or my 5-year-old, then this duck gives you an idea of how to behave. Because 3 to 5-year-olds don't understand complexity. And when you take your time out, you should go do it privately and come back and just look like you've landed on the water and you're this duck that's gliding in the water and you're chill and life is good. Because that's how little kids draw security. But once they're school age, they are looking around for clues about how to become their best selves, right? And they're trying to answer the question, who am I? And how do I become an adult who's going to become calm when life is so scary? So how do they learn that? By watching us. So now look like this duck, right? So still on the water, gliding, but really what's happening is underneath the water, your little feet are pedaling like crazy, right? So the way we teach kids to self-regulate is above the water, they can see our calm, but we show them what we're doing to get to calm. We talk about all the things we're doing to regroup so that we can return. All right? Next, I don't know how to respond. There's so much information out there. How do I know what's honest? And the answer is that there is an appalling amount of intentional misinformation that is happening and some unintentional misinformation. And what do we want to do to have our kids be resilient in the future? You want to have them be able to sort out truths from untruths, accurate sources from manipulative sources. You also want to teach them, turn off some of the sources. If you keep 24-hour news on all day, it is really hard to get settled because every moment feels like an emergency. So teach them, this is how I get accurate information. I check in 3 times a day. And so if there's anything new, I'll catch it. And this is the source I understand. And this is why I go to the CDC. And this is why I go to the public health department. So that we're really clear and honest, and our young people will be better prepared later. Next, my mind feels out of control, right? I just can't get myself together. This is a very important time to prove to ourselves and to our kids about the connection between our minds and our bodies. Remember, we were talking about how we are designed to jump and run from the tiger? Well, let me take it the next step. There are actually 2 nervous systems in your body. One is voluntary and one is involuntary. The voluntary system says, I choose to talk, I choose to move, I choose to turn, right? And then there's the involuntary system, which says I'm beating, I'm digesting, I'm breathing, I'm dilating, constricting, dilating, constricting. That's involuntary. Within involuntary, there are 2 parallel systems. What do you know about parallel lines? They never cross. It's one or the other. One system is, I'm chilling. And the other is, there's a tiger chasing my butt. It's one or the other. So how do we get ourselves to calm? When we're most nervous, it is when there is adrenaline surging through our body that says, there could be a tiger there, it could be there, it could be anywhere, it's under attack. What do? You run. Because when you exercise, you literally burn off those hormones and communicate to your body, you have escaped the tiger. But what else can you do? You can transform your body into a relaxed state. If you could only flip the switch from the tiger chasing my butt over to the I'm chillin' system, if you could flip that switch, then everything calms, including your ability to solve problems, plan ahead, and connect to other people. So if only people had the switch, and we do, right? So what can we do the opposite of? Let's get back to that jungle chair. Can I choose to get the blood from my legs to my butt to my belly? Nope, that can't be the switch. It can't be, right? So what can I do? Can I get the sweat back into my pits? Can't be the switch. Slow down my heart rate? Can't be the switch. The only thing you can do is alter your breathing. If that's stressed breathing, then the opposite, which is deep meditative breathing, is actually the switch that gets ourselves to calm. We teach our kids by doing it ourselves. Next, I keep thinking about the worst case scenario. That's called catastrophic thinking. It is easy during times of uncertainty to imagine the worst. In fact, it gives you a little bit of comfort to imagine the worst because then at least there's not uncertainty. The problem is you begin actually living in that reality and expending a lot of energy you don't need to expend. You've got to stop with the catastrophic thinking. Catastrophic thinking always begins with if, then. Stop yourself and go, whoa, what is really happening? You've got to stay present and live in reality to make the best decisions. Next, I feel helpless. So many people feel helpless right now. We get it. But that is why when there are all of these balls that are dropping, what do you want to do? Leave some things on the ground, but figure out which ones to keep up in the air. Another way to think of it is when life is handling you a lot of things you can't do, figure out what you can do. I can't do everything. Same point, just from a different angle. Let go of some of those things. It's okay to not be able to do things. If things that you wish you could do, you visualize as a mountain, but if you do that, you're going to look at the top and you're going to say, I can never get there. You're going to look at the base and say, I can't go around it. The only thing left to do is to give up. Or pick a hill, one hill, walk up that hill. The mountain won't seem so far away. You'll believe you'll be able to deal with it later or scale it later. So learn to let go and do what you can. Next, I feel so disappointed. Especially for people who are driven by a sense of meaning and purpose. What happens is that people feel really disappointed because they're not able to do so many of the things that they want to be able to do. So here is a major resilience lesson. Find joy in every day of your life. Find something every single day that will give you joy. And for many of us, and think of how good the world would be if this was true for most of us, it's about giving service. Because when you maintain a sense of purpose in your life, then what happens is you understand that you're valuable to other human beings. And when you understand that you're valuable to other human beings, it gives you a sense of importance that gives you joy. But there's something else about this that is really useful for your kids. The ultimate act of resilience in the worst of times, the person who survives is the person who can reach to another and say, brother or sister, I need a hand. That's who survives, right? But who reaches? The people who reach are the people who don't feel any sense of shame or stigma for reaching. What gets you to the place where you can borrow strength from another human being without shame or stigma? And the answer is having given. When you've given, you understand how good it feels to give. And therefore, you know that when someone needs to give to you later in life, they're not doing it out of pity. They're not suffering. In fact, they're getting something out of it. Next, I had so many plans that aren't working out. This is in the same categories we've already talked about. But really, what is another way of describing the word resilience? Adaptation. Adaptation to reality. That's really another definition of resilience. And the truth is, when you can't change things, you can spend all your energy lamenting on your failures, or you can adapt to what you can do, and you change. And when we do that, we model resilience for our kids. Here's something else that's particularly important to me. You hear a lot of people talking about how extraordinary certain people are. So let's turn the clock back in history, wildly so, to February. And in February, who are our heroes? Really toxic culture. Our heroes were our great athletes. I have no problem with them. Our great actors, people who were particularly rich, people who were particularly famous, people who were particularly good actresses. You know, bless them. But they were never my heroes. Now, who are our heroes? Now you're talking about the first responders, right? You're talking about the people who are staying in the grocery store lines, putting themselves at risk for a job that pays $12 an hour. That's a hero. You're talking about teachers, right? Who are adapting in a major way all the time. Doctors and nurses and social workers. The people who didn't have the option of staying home because they cared for and about other people. Well, you know what? This is a real opportunity to change our definition of heroics. And I'm actually fairly excited about it because one of the problems with the old definition of heroics is that many people never felt they could get there, right? Not everybody could be a great athlete or a great movie star. So you could dream about it, but then you hit a wall. And when you hit the wall, you had a sense of failure. Everybody can be a hero with this new definition. So I'm really excited about that. Next, are we ever going to get to the bottom of this? Pick either of our problems, any of our three problems: economic crisis, equity crisis, biologic crisis. It's going to take resolve. It's not turning the page. It's deep diving. It's honesty. It's reflection. It's effort. That's called resolve. And when we stick with things and raise kids to be the kind of 35-year-olds who are going to stick with things, it's going to be a better world. Will things ever be the same? How many times have you heard your friends ask that, right? It's the big question of the hour. And I'm going to give you an answer you may not like. I hope not, right? Like, by answering with you to you, I hope not, I need you to know that I'm actually giving you the deepest level of hope I possibly can. There are things that have been uncovered about our society that are just not going back. And what that means is that we run the real possibility now of building a better world. So I have tremendous hope. I choose to be incredibly aspirational right now because I think we might be better off than we've ever been if we handle this correctly, right? So remember, this unsettling time is going to leave a generational mark on young people. But what's it going to look like? So another really common emotion is this sense of being vulnerable, frightened, and insecure. We're all feeling it, as well as being lonely and isolated. Think about this, right? Think about how much more kids are going to appreciate being in school when they can be with their friends again, right? It's going to be amazing. Think about what it's going to be like to go to their churches, their mosques, their synagogues. Think about or their temples, what that's going to be like again. It's going to be amazing. Spirituality will have a different meaning. Think about what it's going to be like for this generation of kids to safely hug their grandparents again. It's extraordinary. For a generation or a culture that really didn't pay enough attention to its elders, I choose to be aspirational, to say that we might be in a place where we will really appreciate their presence again, when we were worried about them and couldn't be there in person and comforting them. So what that means is that I hope that the lesson that this generation walks away with, just as the Depression era kids grew up to become really frugal, the World War II kids ended up thinking they could handle anything, the 9/11 kids were suspicious, right? There's a generational flavor. Gosh, I pray that the generational flavor from this episode is that relationships strengthen us. I'm going to read for you a parable that I wrote that is, the concept is stolen from Aesop, who wrote about a soldier and a general. So I'm not writing about soldiers and generals, but the same concept. A young person was feeling frustrated, angry, and powerless, close to their breaking point. Sometimes this showed through words spoken or screamed, sometimes through flowing tears, and most often through silence. A loving adult approached and said, "I know these moments are frightening, and sometimes it feels as if we have no control over our lives. Sometimes it even feels as though we'll break, like a stick about to snap." The adult then challenges the youth to break a stick laying on the ground. The young person picks it up and easily breaks the stick in two, relating to its fragility. The caring adult gathers several sticks, ties them together, and hands them to the child. "Go ahead and try to break the sticks now." The young person tries and can barely even get them to bend. The adult kindly explains, "Each of those sticks by themselves can easily break, but when they're joined with others, they become stronger than if we added all of their individual strengths together. We're like a bundle of sticks. Each of us, you, can be fragile at any moment, but together we're stronger. In moments when we feel most vulnerable, we gather people around us to draw from their strength. In time, you'll take this lesson and you'll be the one lending your strength to others." If we can raise a generation of kids to think like this, oh boy, are we going to build a better world. Last, stress is incredibly uncomfortable. It makes you sweat, it makes you smell, it makes you not be able to think clearly. You got to do something about it. And doing something about it is called coping. And the problem, the great scourge of humanity is that almost everything you fear in your adolescent and true in adulthood, they're negative coping strategies. People don't become alcoholics for fun. It did something for them. Same with drugs. So many things we fear, whether it's cutting or eating disorders or certainly drugs, punching someone in the face, bullying, it's kids trying to cope. So they're not negative because they don't work. They work really well. They're negative because they destroy you, right? But when we can instead raise kids with a wide repertoire of positive coping strategies, then the path of least resistance, stress happens, you become uncomfortable, but the path of least resistance is right there, and you go towards the positive. So I want to introduce you to the Center for Parent and Teen Communication. This is a center I run. We do many, many things behind the scenes, but the outline thing that the world knows about is this website that I'm taking you to now, which is parentandteen.com. And Kelsey, shake your head if you can see the website now. I did right, good. So what this is this is a multicultural website, and that is very, very important to understand. Many websites have many pictures of different kids. That's not multicultural because most websites still are white middle class biased, meaning that people from other cultures will often feel undermined or less than by getting parenting information. And we're by no means perfect, but we are really striving and struggling to get there with lots of consultation and lots of different writers. But the most important thing about our site is that we're about strengthening family connections. Right now, if you read or if you ask the question to, or if you Google the question, how do I talk to my kid? The most likely word you're going to see is the word survival come up, which is really poison. It implies that there's something intrinsically wrong with the teen years. We're the opposite. We celebrate adolescence. And on this site, we have many, many articles ranging from 100 words to 2,500 words. We have films, we have podcasts, we have games, like stupid little games, things like that. And in each of these categories, there are different subjects. Each subject has many different articles on it. Parenting that works is really about striking that perfect balance between warmth, your kid knowing how much you love them, and not being your kid's friend, and having your kid actually know that you set boundaries to keep them safe and moral, right? Over here, I want to call your attention to two things that are relevant now. Under supporting emotional health, probably my favorite article on the site, and maybe it's because it would have been so good for me at 17, which was my bad year, if people knew how to get me to help in a way that wasn't full of shame and stigma. So this is the whole site is strength-based, and it's preparing teens to seek professional help. It'll give you the language that you need to use or that you should use to help your child understand all that is good and right in them and why seeking help is an act of strength, not of weakness. For me, the thing that I needed to hear the most when I was 17 is this piece right now. When your kids are anxious or depressed, make no mistake about it, they're ashamed of those feelings. And the truth is that the kids who have the tougher adolescences end up being the best adults in the world, right? They're full of feelings. And the idea is not to suppress their feelings, it's to teach them how to celebrate, leverage their feelings, and to self-regulate when they're feeling badly. And that's what this language is about. The other thing that I want to show you is the last thing is for teens, because I really brought you this page to show you what we have for coping. So there are articles on how to talk to parents. The whole rest of the site is about parents. This is how you talk to your kids. This piece is kids. This is how you talk to your parents. But here is a section on managing stress. And this is build a stress management plan. Your children, by the way, this is all free. Put it out on all your networks. Anybody can use it. This is written by young people for young people, using my work, which is rooted in evidence. It teaches about stress and coping. It gives a whole comprehensive plan, which I didn't give to you tonight, but it's a pretty comprehensive plan. And you could spend 3 hours in the site. Lots of links, lots of films, or whenever you're ready, you can start your plan. And when you start your plan, we will walk you through 11 steps. You'll put in your name and your email. You don't have to, but if you do, we'll give you a PDF of your individualized plan. We are not collecting data. This is fully confidential. It disappears once you create it for yourself, right? But you have your own plan, and we walk you through how to cope. So just super quickly, identify and tackle problems. Some of this is going to sound familiar to you. What do I treat like a real tiger, but it's really not? How do I know it's not really a threat? How do I convince myself that this too shall pass? What are the strengths I'm working with? And one of my favorite words in the English language, yet, right? If you can learn to put yet into your vocabulary, it just can calm you at your worst times. I can't do math. I don't have any friends. I haven't made friends yet, right? So as you'll see, young people can choose the things we're giving them, or they can write in their own answers. From there, we go to breaking mountains into hills. From there, which problems can you avoid? What are the steps I can do to avoid it? Which problems are not worth worrying about? How do I focus my energy on things I can change? This should all sound very familiar to you because it's not dissimilar to what I've been talking about for the last hour, right? Then we talk about our bodies, exercise. We talk about relaxation. Next is going to be nutrition. From there, the importance of sleep. From there, getting away from emotions through instant vacations. You can think of this as drug prevention. Drugs are about escape. Telling kids not to do drugs has never worked by itself. Telling kids to process their emotions is not full drug prevention. Escaping is drug prevention. So my favorite thing, and the thing that's been proven to work the most, is reading a book. Why? Because you're visualizing the panorama, hearing the sounds, smelling the smells, tasting the taste, feeling the feelings. There's no room for intrusive thoughts, so you're really, truly escaping. But you also got to deal with problems. How do you let feelings out? I laughed it out, I cried it out, I wrote it out. From there, how do I contribute to my community? Back to that sense of joy you get from meaning and purpose. This is a comprehensive, rooted in science, stress reduction management plan that kids can use at any time. And then you can set up, you can join the website and at any time, and you'll get anywhere from daily to weekly reminders or tips on parenting. What you'll never get is a request for money. It's not that kind of site. I want to open this up now to lots of questions. I want to tell you the resources that I have available. These are all American Academy resources. I'm not coming to you as a book salesman. Books make almost no money, honestly. I'm coming to you as a youth advocate who has spent my career putting stuff in writing so people know the best of science to apply to kids. Your community, it sounds like your community will be doing a reading in of the 4th edition of Building Resilience. Raising Kids to Thrive is about 4 years old. It's advice from about 500 kids on how to answer the 2 hardest questions or balance the 2 hardest things. How do I love my kid without unconditionally, but still have expectations? And how do I protect my kid, but still let them learn from failure? It's that wrestling act. And reaching teens is not for you to get as individual parents. It's frankly too expensive for individual parents. It's a comprehensive, strength-based, really textbook with 4 films that really teach you how to build the best in young people or youth-serving professionals, how to apply love-based, strength-based strategies. But all of these things together are kind of a family of strength-based resilience. So I ended exactly where I wanted to. So we have half an hour for questions, and I'm just ready to hear what you got. Oh, the only rule I would say is please do not start questions with "my child Billy did blank." A, I think this is being recorded, and B, your kid would hate you. So keep your questions generic. All right, you're just better off if you do. All right.
Thank you for that. And thank you, Dr. Ginsburg, for your presentation. And so I want to remind everyone, if you do want to ask a question, which I saw some in the chat box, I'd love to hear your voice and see your face. So you can just click the raise hand icon, or you can just write your name in the chat box and we can try to find you, but it's much easier to find you if you click the raise hand icon. So are there any questions for Dr. Ginsburg? People might be formulating. There was one by David Dooley, and I don't know if we can find him in here.
I see him.
Okay, there you are. David, I'm going to ask to unmute you here to see if you want to ask it yourself. It's not.
Okay.
Hi.
Okay, so here's the question. The most important and most powerful source of a child's resilience are parents who engage in parenting behaviors and practices generally recognized as supporting their healthy development. This begs the question, why aren't the CDC and the AAP working furiously to find ways to improve the overall quality of parenting in the United States? Maybe parenting education campaigns akin to the smoking and seatbelts campaigns of the past. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, David, for that question. So I don't represent the CDC, so I can't really speak to the CDC. I love your idea, and I want to make sure that the audience understands why it actually, from a health point of view, would make so much sense. Because what I didn't talk about on this call, but which I've very much been speaking with and working with Peace and Justice on, is we know that childhood trauma is the major factor that determines, not, I don't know whether we know it's the major factor, change the word "the" to a major factor that predicts physical health, biological health, emotional health, even the genetics that you pass along to your children. And we know that adults who protect kids, ideally their parents, but it should be all of our responsibility, can really affect health dramatically. So I would love to see there being a national campaign. As someone who does represent the American Academy of Pediatrics, I can tell you that I think we are working on it furiously. We speak about it all the time, and we, I personally, you know what I've done around it, but I agree with you. And then I would say that, David, your question would be even better if you, after you said CDC and American Academy of Pediatrics, you then said Parent-Teacher Association, you then said, you know, National Conference of Churches, and you just basically said everyone who cares about humanity began focusing on children. And then you said that rather than just saying that we should have parenting curricula, which basically is guiding and supporting parents how to be their best, which we all agree, the thing that would make me feel even better is to understand that we need an intergenerational approach to raising kids. In other words, the parents who are most in need of support deserve support themselves. They are often victims of intergenerational oppression and marginalization, and that there are systems that also make a difference to parents. So supporting effective parenting is not just parenting classes, it's supporting systems that allow families to thrive. Thank you for that very powerful and impassioned question.
Wonderful, thank you. So I see Karen has her hand raised, so I'm going to ask to unmute you. You just have to click yes and accept that.
Hello.
Hi,
Thank you very
Karen.
much Hi, Kelsey, and thank you, Dr. Ginsburg, and everyone for the option to share in the space today and tonight. My question stems more in the younger age, since my child is younger, and so the question is general for younger children, right? So their need for socialization is paramount for quality development, and yet in this scenario, we have concerns with them being too close to others because of the social distance. So how do you balance those needs for them to give hugs, high five, boys to wrestle, girls to kind of play dolls, which is going to be close. I mean, that's close contact stuff at that age. And yet we have this charge to socially distance. So that results in isolation, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, these factors become incredibly challenging. So what are some thoughts on that?
Yeah. So literally, your question is brilliant. And the fact that you're asking it, I hope you at the same time understand that no one has found that balance, right? We're at a time right now where safety matters the most because it's a matter of survival, while at the same time, we care deeply about socialization. So we probably should continue to, and we know that for all diseases, small children are often the carriers of diseases. We know that. So what I hope is that our families are getting lots and lots of hugs and lots of attention and physicality within our homes within which we're retreating. And then we're doing as many things as we can virtually to keep kids as separate as we can for the sake of disease prevention. That is not a satisfactory answer, but that is because a satisfactory answer doesn't exist. You are absolutely correct that there is that is an incredible socialization need right now. And I think that you have to, on some level, think about your own family and what is best for your own family. So I have people who I know well whose child is getting so much anxiety around, am I 5 feet apart? What's 5 feet? You know, is it, you know, so much anxiety that my advice to that kid was treat the world as if it's more normal. Because the amount of suffering that your kid is going through right now and the anxiety that your child is generating is not worth it to you. So do the things that your kid will not know you're doing special attention. Wash your hands, make it a game, do these kind of things, but don't go putting an extra level of fear onto him that he can't handle right now.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm seeing a couple other questions in the chat box, so I'll just read them out loud. One is from Daniel Clever, and if you want to read it yourself, for sure, just click unmute and then you can do that. He says, I know parents who are worried about socialization and reintegrating kids back into society. Any suggestions when that time comes?
Do everything you can to make it not as big of a jolt. In other words, try to break isolation as much as possible in a safe way now using, imagine how terrible this would be if we didn't have the internet and we didn't have games and all these things we used to hate, right? At the same time, if we had to design an intervention to make kids want to go out and play and put down their iPhones, this is the intervention, right? Because suddenly they're going to be so happy to get back to normal life. Do that as much as you can. But what I want to talk to you, if I can talk to you as not just, you know, the 40 faces that I see here, but as a community. Take care of the kids in your own house, thinking about their socialization. But I want you to be aware of something. Disparities between the families with the responsive, engaging parents and the families that don't have the engaged parent, either because they don't know how to be engaged or because there are so many stressors they can't be engaged. The disparities are going to explode. Think about, just listen to the answers that I've given and think about how impractical they are for some people, right? So I've talked about create space and new hugs for your kids at home, opportunities for engagement for your kids at home. What if you're not at home because you're working a double shift? What if you are sleeping in your car, and I know people who are, because you don't want to bring coronavirus home, right? What if you actually are in a domestic violence relationship and you're barely surviving yourself? Then what is happening is those kids are having a very different experience with isolation. And what they're also missing, the most protective factor that kind of lessens the disparities, which is schools. Not only with the knowledge that's transmitted in schools, but with the teachers who have their eyes on the kids and know which kids need the most. So think about that and understand that, you know, please God, you have a wonderful family and you've got 2 or 3 kids and you're saying my kids drive me crazy, but oh, we're having such a good time at home. We're playing cards, we're playing games, we're doing snuggles, we're doing all these great things. Those families are actually in some ways having relatively good experiences with coronavirus, right? And those kids are going to be okay. There are families out there that can't do that thing for one reason or another, and those kids are going to be further behind socially, academically, spiritually, emotionally, which is why I would beg all of us to think as a community, not just about the kids in our house, but those kids we know on our block whose parents can't give them what they need. And then we help create the enriching experiences for them, because it's going to be a long time before we close this gap again, because it's going to be wider. And, you know, this is Peace and Justice Institute. So let's be real. Let's be real about this, right? It's, you know, parenting is not just about the parents that you have your eyes on. It's parenting.
Beautiful. Thank you. I see from Patricia, she says, Dr. Ginsburg, what's the best way to adapt our kids' lives if they are afraid about the life they're living right now?
So I'm not sure that I understand the full intent behind the question. And if you wanted to get on live, I'd be happy to hear more from you. But I want to respond to the question itself, because you're talking about the fear that they have. And let's go back to the general premise of the talk. The talk is that uncertainty is the worst thing that there is, right? Uncertainty creates emotional and physical distress. So if your kid is afraid, my guess is that they're dealing somewhere between reality and things that are beyond reality. So let's have an honest conversation with them. And I'm not blind to the fact that people have relatives who have died and things like that. I'm also not blind to the fact that you're living in Florida and your upswing is what I experienced 2 months ago. Like, I know what's happening there, at least from the news, what I know. You know, living without catastrophic thinking and giving them enough information so that they know what's really happening, not the hype of what's happening, including things that are bad and how you handle the things that are bad. That's the way to help someone manage fear. And that's a resilience lesson. So hugs alone don't build resilience. They give comfort. They give security. Resilience is when you teach someone to deal with emotions. And when it comes with fear, it is separating what is the real tiger versus the worried tiger in the grass, right? And helping someone do that is the way to go.
Thank you.
If I didn't understand that question fully, feel free to get on.
I asked her if she wanted to be unmuted, but it didn't come through. So maybe she feels good on that. So I see Julika. It's a longer question, so I don't know. Let me try to give you an option to ask it yourself. We'd love to hear your voice. I don't hear her yet. So it says going back.
Hi, yes.
Oh, great. Go ahead.
Can you hear me? Yeah, thank you. So, you know, in light of what you just talked about, and also in reference to the earlier comment that, you know, what we really need is supports for parents versus parenting education. Not that parenting education is bad or that they can't help either, but in the context of really parents finding actively support for themselves as well as for others in their community as a way to really build that protective factor for their own families and for others. What suggestions do you have, or do you have any thoughts or ideas around at this time, you know, of uncertainty, how we can connect so that we can be really fully present for our children and their feelings and their needs and so forth?
Yeah. So, Julia, just in the way of clarification, it's a both, it's not an either. I do believe in parenting education, but I also believe that as a society, what we don't want to do is say there are good parents and bad parents, and that's the problem. We have to understand the structures and the systems that make good parenting possible, right? So the, oh gosh, would you give me a one-line reminder on the second half of your question? Just repeat one line just so you can get back to me.
I mean,
My bad, or
sorry.
see if you could
Just-
summarize. Go ahead.
Yeah, just as in, and I fully agree with what you just said. And what can we do as parents to build or strengthen our own community and support system?
Great, thank you. Yeah, I'm getting older. So the issue, so I don't really know the answer to your question, Julika, not because I don't care to know it, but because I don't know Orlando and I don't know you, right? And there's so many possible answers there. What I do know is the bundle of sticks. I do know that one person bends and that a bunch of people together are stronger than each of their individual selves, right? That's a matter of physics. I know that. And whether you're gonna find it in your extended family, whether you're gonna find it in your place of worship, whether you're gonna find it through the Boys and Girls Club, through the school, that I don't know, right? What I do know is the power of human beings, right? I know that. And I know that, but as to where you find it, I don't know. But what matters for our society to move forward, we have to move away from rugged individualism. Let's talk about how 2030 can be better than 2020, right? We have this country of rugged individual. Pick yourself up by your bootstraps. Like, how's that working out right now, right? Right? The cultures and the communities that we can learn from, and forgive me for saying this, but our communities of color, my gosh, we have so much to learn about extended family and extended communities and drawing strength from the communal whole. We have so much to learn from them in mainstream, and by that I mean white culture. So I don't know the answer for you, but I do know that the answer is the solution. That it is in reaching out to other people that is the solution. Where you're going to find them, I don't know. But I'll scream from the rooftops saying that. And if we do it, we're going to show our kids how to build a better world.
Thank you. So I want to give everyone another opportunity to raise your hand if you have another question. In the meantime, I'll ask a question because I'm a mom of 2 kids.
There is one hand up.
I don't see it on my screen. Maybe it's not popping to the top.
It says, I don't know which is actually the first name, but Nasidi Baba, but I don't know how to call on that person.
Interesting. It's not showing up for me.
Hi, can you
Hi.
hear me?
Yes, great.
Okay.
My name is Nadia. Thank you so much for, this is very much needed. It was like perfect timing for me anyway. So we started this whole thing, and in the beginning it was actually a positive experience. Just because my daughter was going through some little hardship in her school, and it was kind of the perfect break. I felt like it was actually better that way. And now it's getting hard for everyone. And you talked about how it's hard for the kids. Definitely. I mean, I don't know how other parents think, but I've always thought, oh my gosh, this should be hard for a lot harder for them. I don't even want to imagine at their age being in this situation. I mean, I feel lucky that I am more than 40 because now I'm more patient because just a few years ago, I don't think I would have handled it the same way, really. And I'm getting very impatient now, but I know I have to just go with the flow. My question is that balance that you're talking about, and definitely I think I'm gonna go to that website. It just, for example, we're talking about electronics, and in the beginning I thought it was a good idea to have that social for the kids through online environments. I just feel that sometimes it hurts them more, and I'm trying to find, okay, so what's the solution really? It's very hard to find that balance, and I'm not sure how to navigate that really.
Nadia, I don't think that I've ever given a parenting talk anywhere in the country in the last 10 to 15 years that one of the questions at the end wasn't about social media or electronics, because there's so much anxiety around it. And I think that you're right that on balance, it has both good and bad, right?
Yes.
You gave the example of how it was healthier in the beginning for your daughter to have a little separation from school. So
Yes.
I don't know your daughter, and I'm not talking about her now. But for some kids who couldn't find friends in school for one reason or another, the best thing that ever happened to them was social media. Because now you can have a best friend in Nebraska who you've never met, you know? Best thing that ever happened to them. But at the same time, when you're living in a world that isn't about real human connection, it's problematic. When you're living in a world where untruths are spread like sport on the internet, it's terrifying, right? When you're living in a world where healthy sexuality is hard to find, like Google a good, healthy question about sex. Really do this. Just ask a good, healthy question about sex and see what your children will have to navigate to get to the right answers, right? So it scares me. But I'm going to tell you honestly that I don't think now is the time to be constricting. So my general answer is it's all about education, conversation, and boundaries or limitations. So for example, yes, you can be on the cell phone, but no, you may not have the cell phone at dinner. Dinner is family time. Yes, you may be on the cell phone. Yes, you may use it for homework, but no, it is in the not the locking box, the docking box in the living room for recharging at night. To just make sure that they're getting good sleep, that they're getting nutrition, and most importantly, that you have family time. So what I would say is that now, when kids are so isolated and so separated, now is not the time to be putting in restrictions. The only restrictions that I would have is dinner or whatever it is that is your family time. You should still have that. And you should double down on once something goes out into the internet, it lives forever. So, that 24-hour rule or the 1-hour rule, because, that, have you heard the kids talk about FMO, fear of missing out? Have you heard that? That's the big adolescent thing. They have to be up all night because all the good stuff happens at 3 a.m. and we're gossiping at 3 a.m. FMO, I don't want to miss out, right? That is so dangerous because it's when things get escalated and then, talk about bullying, kids are getting bullied online and all of these other things. So we've got to double down on that teaching, but not restrict from access because it's the only thing they've got.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm not seeing another hand on my end. Do you see one, Dr. Ginsburg? Because they're not popping up for me. That's funny.
I do not right now.
Okay.
I don't see everybody. I just have oh, look, there's a 1 out of 4. It looks like I can change screens. I'll miss you guys though.
I know.
Never done this before.
Yeah, it's fun. You can scroll through. There were like 120 people, I think, on it one time. So
I don't see any other hands.
Okay. Well, I definitely want to honor your time and just thank you so much on behalf of the Peace and Justice Institute for being here and Orlando Health for sponsoring this fantastic workshop with you. And I know I learned a lot, and I hope everyone else did as parents here tonight as well. And we look forward to having you back in August for medical professionals.
I really am loving what this community is doing, and it's an honor to be a part. Lucy just raised her hand. I don't know if she actually has a question, or that's like a happy hands.
Yeah, happy hands.
Sorry, I'm like new to this world too, yeah. So thank you. It was a great show. I can't wait to meet you in person.
Me too. Me too. Well, thank you so much, and everyone have a wonderful night. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. You have my email from the Eventbrite, and I'll send out an email with all the links that we covered tonight in the coming days. So thank you so much, everybody. Have a great night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.